Water Authority Board of Directors meeting for May 19th. Note that it is a little early, but that is our scheduled time. We will start with a roll call. Ms. Purgett.
Ron Hartman.
Here.
Paul Anderson.
Here.
Annie Breckis.
Here.
Naomi Durr.
Here.
Alexis Hill.
Here.
Naomi Darden.
She's absent.
Ed Lawson.
Here.
Mark Corey.
Here.
Lucas Valletta.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, thank you so much. That takes us to item number 2, Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Anderson, would you lead us this morning?
I surely will. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. Item number 3, public comment. Madam Clerk, do we have anyone signed in for public comment? Okay. We will close public comment unless someone would like to speak. We'll take us to item number 4, possible board comments or acknowledgements. Anyone? Okay. I will close item number 4. Item number 5, approval of the agenda.
Motion to approve?
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, so I have a motion by Ms. Dewar, second by Mr. Anderson. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item number 6, approval of the minutes for April 20th, 2022. Are there any emendations to those minutes? Okay, seeing none, looking for a motion.
Move to approve.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Anderson, second by Ms. Dewar. Madam Clerk, is there any public comment on this item? Okay, bring it back to the board. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. That now takes us to an item between items. Mr. Folletta.
Yes, we have an attorney-client session. We go into closed session.
Okay, all right, I will put us into recess, and we hopefully will be back within, I've got it listed as 30 minutes, but hopefully we'll be done even quicker than that. We are in recess. Okay, as soon as I get a couple more board members here.
Ms. Hill on the phone?
Alexis, are you on the phone?
I'm here.
Okay, wonderful.
Nope, so this is all new to me.
Wow.
yet have our counselor back. We just have our board, but I think,
Coming out of the restroom.
okay. Okay, I'm going to, Ms. Purgott, are we ready? Okay, and I know we have Ms. Hill. I'm gonna bring us back to order. I apologize for the lengthy time that we were away. We are now on item number 7, presentation of fiscal year 2022, quarter 3, third quarter, to-date financial results. Mr. Bowman, welcome.
Hello, members of the board. It's nice to be here. Get myself- Okay, so you should have third quarter, year-to-date fiscal 2022 staff report in your agenda packet. To lead, just take away nothing significant to report in here, which is nice to say. Even with inflation price increases that we are all hearing about, we haven't felt that significantly yet. I emphasize yet in that sentence. Bottom line, through 3 quarters, we're $5.9 million higher than budget in our total change in net position or net income, and $3.6 million lower than prior year through 3 quarters. The second page of the staff report, we'll dive into operating revenues a little bit. So you can see in total, we're 2% higher than budget. Within that, water sales are within 1% of budget. That's obviously the biggest driver of this category. Looking at water sales, thinking about the storms that we had in April, the precipitation, and then also the cold snap that we had recently, I wouldn't be surprised if we see a nominal dip in water sales in the fourth quarter. But definitely nothing to worry about. I think we'll be within that 1% to 2% of budget, most likely at the end of the year, if I had to guess. And we'll take the water and the cold and keep the snowpack up there as long as we can. So the next page is operating expenses. So kind of right where we want to be there, about 5% under budget. Salaries and wages and benefits are lower due to position vacancies. So as you know, when we budget, we kind of front load all our positions to be hired in July and be filled throughout the year. We know that doesn't happen, so we do have a little bit of buffer in there throughout the year. Services and supplies lower by 5% in budget. So like I said, even with price increases, inflation, we haven't seen material impacts yet. We are starting to see bids come back, contracts renewing, and they're a lot higher than they were, and we're doing the best we can to manage that. So, but no significant impact yet. The next section is non-operating revenues and expenses. This is kind of a wild category here because of what's happening with interest rates and how that's impacting our investment income. So, with the significant and quick rise in rates, that puts our investments that we're holding at fixed rates into a loss position, and we have to recognize a loss on the fair value adjustment of those investments. So I was looking at a chart yesterday and had a call with our financial advisors. And if you look at what, say, 5-year treasury or 2-year treasury over the last 7 or 8 years, it's sort of some rolling ups and downs. And then we sort of bottomed out right in 2020, 2021. And then it's just, an absolute, almost straight up increase in those rates. And so that impacts our investments. And we are working with our financial advisors to take advantage of that as best we can as well. So if that means selling some investments prior to maturity, if we're holding them at a lower rate so we can take advantage of some of these higher rates, then we'll definitely do that. The last section of the income statement is capital contributions. In total, $8.5 million over budget here. To point out, grants revenue, we're over budget. That $2 million that is the top line is for FEMA awards that we received related to the 2017 flood. Although we received the award, which is in the accounting world when you recognize the revenue, we're waiting for the state to finish reviewing the applications to actually receive the cash. But by all accounts, we will receive that cash. Hopefully it's this fiscal year. remaining in this section is connection fees, so developer contributions. As you can see, those are remaining high, and don't know of any change to that yet at this point. Beyond that, our cash position is still solid, $228 million at the end of the quarter. And that's it. So pretty high level. I kept it brief, and happy to take any questions. Again, not an action item. I'll take any questions.
So, Mr. Bowman, I do have a question for you. When it comes to connection fees, are we keeping on par with what our costs are? We're not losing any money?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, that's something that we evaluate on a regular basis.
Okay.
We did just complete that, and we increased WSF and BSF fees in January based on projects that have been completed, upcoming projects, and all of that analysis includes a carrying cost of sort of fronting that cash as well. So, yeah, we really are staying on track.
Can we talk about hydro sales? Okay, so I don't know about your power bill, but mine shot through the roof, and I'm hopeful that NV Energy is paying us more for the power that we're generating.
So our power sales are under a power purchase agreement. So we're locked in.
For how long?
And that agreement expires in 2028, 2029.
Jeez.
So it's coming up.
2028.
Yeah, so we're stuck with where we're at now, although the renewable energy market is interesting, and we'll see what happens in the next few years, but market rates for renewable energy is
Are they selling those?
often less
Are
than
they
what
selling
we're
those
getting.
credits? Does NV Energy sell those credits?
I
outside?
believe they do. Yeah,
Yeah.
they get our credits.
Right.
That'll be a consideration when we get with NV Energy.
And they can
to
sell those credits
renegotiate.
outside the state. They can sell them any way they want,
Yeah,
is the point.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a good gig if you can get it. Let me tell you, because I'll bet you there's nobody here whose power bill has gone down.
Yeah.
Ms. Breckus?
Is the,
Are we experiencing operating costs for the Thomas Creek, the Mount Rose water treatment plant yet?
Yeah, pretty minimal at this point, but we have started operating that plant, and so.
So you have it in the budget?
Costs, yes.
Is your budget proposals to have it like at full operation at the end of the year?
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Any other questions?
I guess I have one
Yeah,
question.
go ahead.
So there's I think it ties back because I think it will affect our capital, but there's a development that's been proposed south of, it's in the Reno sphere, but it is apparently not served by Tumwa, the general area. And it reminded me of kind of the Boomtown situation where if they come in during this fiscal year, which it sounds like they're coming in June, then one of the evaluations would be, do they have water, with you guys? And it's not served by Tumwa now. And if we had to add them, how would that affect this capital budget? Do they have to pay all costs, or how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not familiar with what you're talking
Yeah,
about, but
it's a brand new
generally-
development, but it's in the sphere, but it's not annexed, so.
Sure, I mean, generally, we would look at it financially, and obviously, we would make sure that there's no impact to existing
Gotcha.
ratepayers.
Okay. But it is down there. It was triggered by her comment too about the fan and the reinjection and all of this stuff, and I just wondered. Okay, thanks.
Okay. Any other questions? Ms. Hill, do you have any questions for staff?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. All right. This is not an action item, so we will close item number 7 if there are no other questions, and we will go to item number 8, and I will open the public hearing. Item 8A is discussion and action on request for adoption of resolution number 304, a resolution to adopt the final budget for fiscal year ending June 30, 2023, and the 2023 through 2027 5-year capital improvement plan, or the CIP. Mr. Bowman and Ms. Tozy.
All right. Thank you, Matt Bowman, for the record. So this presentation will be relatively short because we went over the tentative budget in detail back in March. But what you have in front of you is an action item. It's a proposed final FY 2023 operating budget and 2023 through 2027 capital improvement plan. So we're asking this board to take action, adopt the resolution, approving the budget, and then we'll submit it to the State of Nevada Department of Taxation as we're required to do. Helping me out today is Sandra Tozy, financial analyst, and then we should have Danny Rotter on the phone as well to take any CIP-related questions if you have any.
Mr. Rutter, are you on the phone?
Yep.
Okay,
All right.
very good.
Danny's on vacation, so he's calling in. I made him. So, so to start, I want to just give a big thank you to Sandra and Danny for their work in preparing the CIP. You should all have copies in front of you, and hopefully you had a chance to review the electronic version that was sent out. But every year they spend a ton of time, line by line, going through the capital projects. What are the needs of Tumwa's operations? What new infrastructure is needed? What rehabs are needed on existing infrastructure, considering financial impact, capacity of our staff, and we come up with what you see there today. And I also want to thank Sonia Folsom, who's not here, but she's instrumental in helping put the document together. We even have a committee to review the pictures that are going in the document. We take a vote on which one should go on the cover, and it's kind of a fun process, to be honest. And then lastly, just on the budget side, I want to thank Sophie Cardinell, Tumwa's controller, for helping with the operating budget. It's a lot of work that goes into that as well. Okay, so in March, as I mentioned, board approved the tentative budget and CIP. So the staff report in front of you reflects changes from that budget. So we'll start just on the operating budget side. Overall, change in net position was an increase of $2 million. And the biggest part of that is a $3 million grant that we received right around the time that I was presenting the tentative budget. I think I mentioned it at that time, but it wasn't in there. And that's a $3 million grant as part of the fiscal year 2022 federal omnibus appropriations bill. And that's to help fund the American Flat Advanced Purified Water project. So that's reflected in this budget. And then offsetting that, we do have a small increase to hydro revenue. When we prepared the tentative budget, we were hoping for a wetter first 3 months of the calendar year, and it wasn't that. As we know, it was very dry. So that impacted our projected river flow, so we dropped the hydro revenue a little bit accordingly. And then also offsetting the increase because of the grants is an increase in salaries and wages benefits based on an updated LMI study that we had done. So that's it on the operating budget side, and I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Sandra to talk about the CIP.
Thank you, Matt. Sandra Tozy for the record. Included in the staff report are a few changes that we made to the CIP for the tentative that was presented in March. Included in your packet, as Matt mentioned, you have the CIP document. Hopefully you've had a chance to review. Just real quick, before I discuss the changes, I would like to point out that we added a section about projects related to conservation in the introductory section. This has been added to the document per member Hill's request during the tentative presentation. In the summary and the staff report, you'll see that the capital spend from tentative increased $27 million for the 5-year total CIP. And in those changes, the primary increase to the 5-year CIP came in raw water category for the Advanced Purified Water Facility at the American Flat at $17 million. And then an additional $8.4 million increase to treatment plant improvements, which include an increase of $5.3 million, which appears to be for the ore ditch pump station rehab, more so than the hydro. And then as well as $2.3 million increase to the Longley plant, Hidden Valley Wells 3 and 4 for treatment improvements. And I just want to note that these increases are all based on updated construction estimates that we'd received. Overall, the increase to the 5-year CIP resulted in an increase of $10.2 million in customer rate funded projects. Again, largely due to increases in updated pricing on various projects. However, when you're looking at the CIP, you will note that there are 2 significant projects that are not reliant on internal staffing, and that is the Advanced Water, Purified Water Facility at American Flat and the AMI project. You have a table in the staff report that shows the impact of these projects, and if they were removed, the CIP total each year is in line with our previous CIP. And with that, that wraps up the changes. Danny, as mentioned, Danny, our engineering manager, is on the phone to help with any specific questions that you may have on projects. And I'll turn it back over to Matt for questioning.
Thanks, Sandra. So just to recap, we're asking for approval of the resolution to adopt the fiscal year 2023 and 23 through 27 capital improvement plan.
Okay. I have a fast question, and probably Mr. Rotter will be the best one. On page 50 of the CIP, it talks about the possibility of putting power generation equipment to produce direct power for Chalk Bluff. What's our timeline on that, Mr. Rotter? That's something I've been kind of pushing for a while now. In fact, I had dark hair when I started asking for it.
Yeah. So right now we've got the CMAR. We're at about a 30% design level. So those cost estimates, of course, a plane is flying right over me. We've got those cost estimates that came in that are represented here. And we're targeting a late fall construction start date and about a 1-year construction period. Although we're looking at ways with the CMAR that we might be able to get, say, get one turbine operational while we're working on the second. So it might not be fully operational right away. We might be able to phase that in and start getting some direct power. But that's kind of the schedule right now, is fall of 22 start construction, fall of 2023 in some form generating power at Chalk Bluff.
And the reason I ask this is because I'm sure Tom was probably in the same position where we can't find people to do work for us at Washoe County. In fact, we have sent out RFPs and gotten no responses, and had to basically review the proposals and try to send them back out again. So. Do we think that this is a realistic proposal? Because I'd sure like to see it sooner rather than later, especially given the dynamics of the cost of energy right now.
Yeah, I think with the CMAR process, we really did a good decision there, because we are having conversations weekly, if not daily, with that CMAR contractor and where their staffing is at, so that they're reserving their staffing and being ready. And then also having a discussion on what local subcontractors are available and having discussions there, what their pricing is doing and what materials are doing, what equipment's doing. So as we continue to dial that in and be in conversation with the CMAR, I'll be able to update on the confidence of that schedule. But right now, that's pretty much where we're at, and I think we do have a quality CMAR on board that's going to help.
Okay. And just a reminder for the board, remember, if we can get this in, this is a project like our current hydro generation plants that were built in the early part of the 20th century, in the teens of the 20th century. It's a gift that keeps on giving. This will be direct power for use at Chalk Bluff, where we can basically take ourselves offline. And so I'm hopeful that the board sees the importance of these kinds of things, because this will help future generations of residents, future generations of green energy advocates. This is just an all-around good thing. Ms. Stewart.
Yeah, just a couple questions. So I noticed in regard to that, on the last item, we noted that the income from the hydro went down, or is expected to go down. And I don't know the percent, but because of low water levels in the river, because of low precip, it went down. I don't know, you have it.
700,000, I think, was the decrease.
Yeah, 800,000 it actually says, but I don't know what that is a portion of. Is it like 1 or 2 or 3 million? I don't know.
Yeah, it is. I think our budget was, let me get the right numbers here. Yeah, we were estimating 3.2.
Yeah.
And we're coming in at 2.4.
Yeah, so I think it's a really good idea. I would support it, but it's also, you know, with our climate change and as life changes and the river flows, it may not produce quite as much as what we'd hope. The other question I had is, a lot of these require it to be set up in such a way so that we don't block access across the whole river. So a lot of hydro has like a dam and across an entire section, but how would this one be set up so that we didn't do that?
Sure. So I'll touch first on the way that this financially is going to work because it's a little different. So we're going to be generating hydropower during our low demand months. So sort
Gotcha.
of over the course of the winter.
Yeah.
And the reason is that water will be coming off, this kind of addresses your second point, an
Yeah.
existing diversion upstream through the Highland Canal, which goes to Chalk Bluff, but then instead of processing it through the plant, we're going to return it to the river. On the way down the hill at the bottom at the Ore Ditch pump station, that's where we're going to spin the turbine. And it's going to be generating power behind the meter for Chalk Bluff. So we'll be offsetting.
For use.
Yeah.
It's like having your own solar at your house. It's your own
So we're
power.
offsetting operating costs, but we'll also have the ability to net meter that back to NV Energy as well. So,
Interesting.
So it's a little unique because
So
we're
it's
not going to
not,
see
we're not
those
adding it,
revenues.
quote, to the grid. We are, like we do with the other, we are using it on site.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Excess can be.
So then my
sold
question
back.
though, so you're not gonna have more things across the river?
No.
So that's great.
No change to existing infrastructure in the river.
That's great.
What will happen to the credits?
I
we-
don't
have
know
we
that
thought of-
we've
have we-
determined that with NV Energy
Okay.
yet,
Okay.
but there will be credits available. And
Yes.
that's part of the
Yeah.
plan.
Yeah, no, I mean,
we
we need-
modeled that into the financial analysis
Good.
because we looked at this project from a financial perspective, so it doesn't make sense to do it. And part
Yeah.
of that was energy credits. So
Right, and sometimes, you know, I mean, it takes some time for it to return dividends, but once it starts returning dividends, it's free money.
yeah, and it's also, I'll just add too, it's a little unique because we needed to rehab the existing booster pump station down there anyway, and that's a key backup for Chalk Bluff if we're not able to divert water and run it through the canal for whatever reason, then we can pump it up from the river right there at Ore Ditch, and that work needed to be done, and so we're able to gain a lot of efficiencies by doing this both at the same time in the same location.
Any other questions for Seth, Ms. Breckus?
Yeah, thanks. So, the project on page 22, the American Flat Purified Facility, it's shown as a 5-year, $117 million project. But it says 70% of that, did it say 70%? Yeah. So the 117 million includes what we're going to get reimbursed by the city of Reno. So we're only in for 34 million or so. And how much, and is that a good solid estimate of what it's going to take to get us there?
At this point, it is. It's still really early. We're working through the 30% design right now. Reno's actually got that contract with AECOM, and we're getting cost estimates as we can. But at this point, yeah, that is our best estimate. We think it's
Okay, so that much to Tumwa. And then how much have we spent all together? And I would go as far, you know, for transparency, not for transparency, but just for comprehension's sake of understanding what this water supply is costing, you know, our people, our residents and everyone in the community. Back to Bedell Flats exercise. How far are we, if you go back 3, 4, 5 years, how far are we, Tumwa, in on this exercise so far?
specifically advanced purified water.
Yeah.
I don't want to misspeak because I don't know without going back and reviewing the total cost, but I think we're less than $5 million certainly into it. And a lot of it is, you know, and then there was cost spent at Bedell Flat certainly for drilling and
Yeah, but to take you to everything that's been done now, you know, all the UNR grants and everything, I've just, you know, maybe that could be future information, but I mean, this project is not like a lift station or a well head rehab. It's a multi-year, decade-long project. And I think Ms. Folsom does a great job on the CIP. This is the best CIP I've ever seen in, you know, 25 years of public budgeting. I would think the project description on this one, which is going out a decade, maybe could articulate how much has been spent to date, your project to date. And that would be helpful to me, but I was just wondering. Thanks.
Okay. Ms. Hill, any questions for staff?
No questions. I do appreciate the water conservation portion of the summary. I think that there's real opportunity for us to articulate to our ratepayers how much water we're saving with these capital investments. So if there's a way to capture that and do that in our annual report, that I think that would really be a great message for us to show that we're stewards of our water. So, but I really appreciate this touch on the conservation elements, and it's something that, you know, hopefully we can do more in depth moving forward.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Anderson.
No question, just want to say thank you for the work you guys have done. This is great. I really do use these when I have opportunities and groups that are interested in knowing what's going on to use the information you guys have provided. This is a perfect tool for us to be able to do that. Thank you.
Okay. All right. If there are no other questions, Madam Clerk, do we have any public comment on this item? Okay, is there anyone wishing to speak at this time? All right, I'm going to close public comment, bring it back to the board. Looking for a motion to adopt resolution number 304.
All right, motion to adopt resolution 304.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second? I have a motion by Ms. Dewar, second by Mr. Anderson. Is there any other discussion on this item? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time. Great work. All right, that takes us now to item number 9. Discussion and possible action regarding the Palomino Farms feasibility study and request for board direction. Mr. Enlow and Ms. Morris.
And Mr. Chair, before we begin this item, I have a disclosure.
Okay?
Okay,
Go ahead.
I want to disclose that I serve on a board, the Lake Ditch Board, with Mike Benjamin, who I think is one of the underlying owners of the Palomino Farms. I don't know if it's a single owner or cooperative, but I know that he's one of the main owners. Maybe you could even identify that for me. But anyway, often at the City of Reno, if we serve on a board, I don't have any financial commitments to him or other relationships with him, other than we both serve on this board, which is a not-for-profit corporation, but it's not a nonprofit.
Okay. Okay, and this is,
Did you?
this is for possible action. Mr. Folletta, does that put Ms. Dewar in any type of a situation where she might have to recuse herself?
Your relationship with this individual will not impair your judgment or
Correct,
Okay, thank you.
correct. But, and you were going to say?
John Zimmerman, for the record, just for clarification, so Palomino Farms LLC is one of the two companies involved in the feasibility project that we're looking at, and Mike Benjamin is a member of Palomino Farms LLC.
Right, okay, thanks, thank you.
All right, thank you so much for that disclosure. Okay, I don't see Mr. Enlow. Is Mr. Enlow on the phone?
Yes, I am.
Okay, welcome, sir. We're glad that you're not with us today.
Thank you.
That's not spoken in the pejorative. So the floor is yours. Go ahead.
I think I'll start it off. Thank you for having us there this morning. We just wanted to bring back the results of this feasibility study effort to you. There's been a considerable amount of work done over the last year looking at the feasibility of this Palomino Farms project. And I know there's a lot of information in the staff report available to you. Just try to give you a high-level summary, and then John Zimmerman and Steph Morris and myself will be there to answer any specific questions you may have. I wanted to just clarify, we're not asking you to make any decisions today. What we're seeking is, based on following the discussion of this, we would hopefully get your approval to continue working with the Palomino Farms Group and our Reno Sparks Washoe County partners in continuing to pursue agreements for this potential project. So just for review, the Palomino Farms project is a concept. It's really a significant regional water management project that would benefit not only Tumwa, but it would benefit Tum Wharf as well. This is really a one-of-a-kind opportunity that we've been investigating where the benefits are pretty substantial. We're looking at a water banking site similar to what we tried to prove up in Bedell Flat that was unsuccessful, but the Palomino Farms site is a viable site for water banking, which could provide this community with 45,000 acre feet of storage capacity underground. So to put that into perspective, that's larger than Boca Reservoir. It can also provide really one of the biggest benefits is the potential ability to have 1,500 acres or more of irrigable land under the control of our community that could be used for recycled water irrigation, either continuing to grow alfalfa out there or possibly even food crops. But it's a very large recycled water piece of property that would be useful for keeping treated effluent out of the river and improving water quality in the river. And lastly, one of the things that we're looking at this for is, in addition to that water banking site, is that it has the potential to provide up to 10 million gallons a day of capacity back into the North Spanish Springs area. And this would all be done under a sustainable water management plan. I wanted to make a couple other points too. I believe Mr. Benjamin is in the audience, and one of the issues that has attracted the cautious support from the area residents is they are willing to forego their development rights on this property. And if this project were to go forward, it would remain as farmland in perpetuity and would not be developed under the current zoning approvals that the property has today. I also wanted to make a comment. I believe there's representatives from Western Turf in the audience. Western Turf, although they were not a part of this feasibility study effort in the beginning, I will say they have been extremely cooperative and have worked with us. And I think they're here just to listen and see where this project goes to. I think they are also generally supportive of the concept. They kind of have some different issues related to, obviously they have a thriving turf farm business out there, but this could also be a great opportunity to provide recycled water to continue their turf farm operations rather than continuing to pump groundwater. So that being said, I just want to review the project concept again very quickly. We are talking about sending recycled water from the North Spanish Springs area, from Tum Wharf, out to Palomino Farms, and using the recycled water to irrigate the crops out there rather than pumping groundwater. So by doing so, that would allow the groundwater wells to rest, and it would allow the water table to start to recover out there. Over the last 40 or 50 years or so, there's been a considerable amount of pumping for agriculture out there. Water levels have declined over 100 feet. And so this would be, by providing recycled water as a really a substitute source of water in lieu of the groundwater. It would allow the water tables to recover out there. Tumwa would also, if this project were to go forward, we would construct a second parallel potable water pipeline out there where we would recharge potable water during the winter like we do at other wells throughout the Truckee Meadows, but just at a much larger scale. We are looking at the ability to recharge 1,300 acre feet of potable water a year out there. That's what our distribution system has the capacity to do, taking into consideration recharge that we're already doing and plan to do in the Spanish Springs area. But the combination of using the recycled water and recharging the potable water, we can basically restore the water levels out there, begin to recover those water levels, and create over time a groundwater bank that would be available for use during drought periods and just during the summer periods where we might need water to augment, I'll say, peak day supplies in the Spanish Springs area. I think we've said this many times. I just want to reiterate it, that there would always be more water put out into the Palomino Farms area than we would bring back. The groundwater rights that we may bring back and use for will serve commitments in Spanish Springs is really a small part of this whole project concept, but it does help with the funding of that. So with that, I think I'm going to turn it over to John and Steph and just let them talk a little bit about some of the permitting issues and considerations. Thank you.
So what this report was looking at was really technical feasibility and whether it was technically feasible to accomplish the goals of the project that Mr. Enlow outlined. But in addition to that, we started to look at the kinds of permitting that we would need to have in place. And so just generally speaking, there would be permits, several permits related to the use of the water, which would include change applications, recharge permits to put the potable water in, permits to be able to use the recycled water for irrigation purposes. In addition to that, there would be, when we change the water rights, there would be interbasin transfer considerations, even though the interbasin transfer statute really was not intended for a project like this. It's a substitute supply where we're bringing more water into the basin than we're taking out, because it would require a change in point of diversion in a place that's different than the place of use. It triggers the interbasin statute transfers. And looking at the criteria, we believe that we would be able to meet that criteria and to obtain that permit, given how the project's going to function and the benefits to the groundwater basin. In addition to that, there's other criteria for surface water or storage of surface water, and we also believe that we could meet those criteria. There's two other kinds of permits that don't have to do with water rights. One is the county Warm Springs area plan. We would need a special use permit and an amendment to that existing plan that was adopted in 2012, and we will continue to work with Washoe County to look for a solution to narrowly tailor that amendment for this project. And finally, just in terms of the pipeline to go out there, we've been looking and working at looking at the feasibility of the pipeline amendment with using NDOT rates, and so far that's looking very positive. So those are some of the items that we would have to take care of and that we would continue to work on, but we've done our initial research. Add anything?
Okay. You know, and I'll just chime in quickly here. 45,000 acre feet it's, you know, I mean, that's a substantial amount of water to store. If board recalls back I believe his name was Arlen Nickel from the Bureau of
Yeah, correct.
Reclamation, right? He suggested that we needed more reservoirs. But because reservoirs are always gravity fed, it becomes difficult, given the topography in the region of where do you put the darn thing? So I see this as an eloquent solution, not to mention, from my perspective, above-ground reservoirs are highly inefficient. You lose, I mean, I don't know what the amount of water that we lose, but, anytime you've got an above-ground reservoir, there's going to be a certain amount of loss, just depending on the weather. And with climate conditions changing, that should, I would suspect, only rise. So I see this as a great thing to study. But I think all of us will agree the devil is in the detail. So, Ms. Breckus.
Yeah. And I do appreciate that we need to create new sources and that those are probably be below ground, like what Chair said. I also realize that Tumworth has some issues it has to deal with, although, unlike my counterparts from Sparks, the Reno City Council, the larger owner of Tumworth, has not had a presentation on the recently created Tumworth Master Plan to understand what Tumworth's issues are, and more importantly, what those are going to cost. So, having said that, number one, this complexity of, the points of diversion, the permits, I think I raised before, they're going to raise interest with the tribe, and I really want this board this body, if the tribe will reciprocate in their communications. I don't know if they see us as a peer and look to other forums, but to understand and solicit their input before we move forward with this permitting. I think I've said that before, and I'm looking for maybe this one to be a different model than, how things have been done before on the Tri-Gid agreements. 2, Chair just asked about, are we keeping up on the previous item with our connection charges? Reno is not. Reno has stayed flat, its connection charges, since 2014. But the rates have gone up with the CPI, and it's going to be a mother of a CPI hitting every household in October when they go up. That inequity is something that has put me at a place where I will not support any more expenditures and large outlays when I see development costs put in that involve Reno's sewer fund, because Reno's sewer fund is not being managed responsible for those large capital needs. And I don't want to be categorical, but I'm pretty darn close to categorical, particularly because the CIP that we just adopted showed Reno coming in about $70 million in the next 5 years on the water purification plant. Then this looks like all Tumworth stuff, so that's also going to hit this Reno sewer charge. And I am not going to go any further until Reno has a sound CIP for all of these outlays to the sewer fund. And I'll say that over here at Tumwa because I don't think we're engaging with a good partner that is being responsible with their finances, and it could leave us hanging. The third issue is, and I understand before this idea was even brought to us, that there was some negotiation with this Palomino Farm Group. And I understand that. A lot of agencies, NDOT's one, and I asked that model to come to the city of Reno, unsolicited proposals. I have an idea, I want to do business with you, come in through this portal, we'll flesh it out. But I would, and this is where my question is, I really want to understand what methodology is going to be put into place to appraise whatever we're getting from them, whether it's a temporary use of their property, an acquisition of their property. I want to understand their appraisal methodologies. I want to understand their investment-backed expectations because I understand, have not owned the property that long. And then, supposedly they are foregoing some development rights. Whether or not those are real or on paper, I don't know. But I really want to understand because I see a cost line here for acquisition. How are we going to go through this costing of that?
Yes.
Thanks.
Let me start with your first point in regards to communications with the tribe. I did reach out prior to this meeting late last week and previously to discuss the Palomino concept with the tribe's attorney and just generally explained what the concept was and what we were looking at doing. In addition to that, I reached out to him at the end of the week to let them know that we were going to be taking this feasibility study to the board and that we would be discussing it today and that we're happy to meet with them to answer their questions about the findings of the study. In regards to the comments on the cost, I just wanted to be clear about what the ask was today, and the ask is not for money, but the ask is really to say that we found that this is technically feasible. There's these additional questions. Does the board want us to move forward working through those additional questions, which include discussions about the cost of purchasing the land, as well as some of the permitting issues, and very specifically, in my mind, the cost split between the different partners who would be investing in this project. And so the ask is not to come back to you with the agreement, but rather, should we continue to do this where we would come back and present the terms of those agreements to the board and get direction on those at a later time when we have some more answers to these other feasibility questions. And then, go ahead.
I was just going to add that Mervyn Wright, who's a member of the Pyramid Lake Paiute Tribe, is on the Northern Nevada Water Planning Commission. And I've reached out to him and talked to him about the Palomino project, let him know that this would be on the agenda today. And he's also on the Planning Commission, which also heard an update about this project.
And then to the final point about the valuation, that would all come back as part of the proposal for the option or the option purchase agreement, and that sort of detail we would be able to respond to at that point in time when we have those agreements negotiated or the deal points that we're ready to bring to the board.
You know, every warehouse that's going up right now is paying cut rate connection fees at the city of Reno at 2014 prices. They have not been touched since 2014. And the only way to get Reno to start to, price those in today's market is to stop being able to go further and further with these projects and these ideas of where we're going. They need to get the rate structure in place. Otherwise, it's going to be on the backs of ratepayers, households, renters who are really struggling. So, I'm just not willing to let Reno continue to have these conversations about these very important capital needs if they can't get their fiscal house in order on connection fees for new growth, which is so that. Now, I appreciate also that Mr. Wright is on the committee and that you're having conversations. And I'm not an expert in, dealing in Indian country, but it may be that there's a different model that we need to consider. Maybe Mr. Chair has to go to the board meetings and present, government level to government level. That may be the way that they appreciate it, or it may be, because we're a local government and they're a federal government, we have to find another way to have the dialogue because they want to be sovereign nation to sovereign nation. I just feel that we really need to understand the ways to have conversations with them about these issues and maybe, more so than just at the technical level, but I don't really know the solutions myself. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Anderson? Hold on just a second.
I just want to say I love the fact that it is technically feasible. This is an exciting project to look at. And if you look at the whole West, all you have to do is turn on the news and everyone's frantically trying to figure out what they're going to do to solve their water issues. Here in our region, we have had a lot of really bright people over the past years and up to current that have made some really good decisions to position us well, that even in several drought years, we still have plenty of water. It's continuing down that path to think about intelligent ways to move forward. How do we make our community more sustainable? this is a perfect example of the kind of projects I think we need to be looking at. That instead of us trying to figure out how can we push the water through the treatment plant and be able to meet all the requirements downstream, when we can be utilizing this product over and over and over again, and keeping it within our community. I just want to say, I think this is awesome, and I say, let's keep on going.
Thank you. Ms. Stewart.
Yeah, like Mr. Anderson, I think that Tumwa has to be as innovative as possible and be looking at these kind of big, game changer kind of projects. So I'm glad that you're continuing the feasibility study. I have a couple questions right now today. I just want to make sure I got a few things that weren't addressed in either the staff report, they may have been in the technical report, but just roughly, how far is Palomino Farms from Tom Wharf?
So this is John Enlow for the record. So the distance from Tum Wharf, I cannot answer, but the distance from the end of Tum Wharf's recycled water distribution system in North Spanish Springs, it's about 10 miles of piping to get it out there.
Right, so I just wanted to get that because a lot of times the basics aren't covered, just for people to understand the concept. So it's about 10 miles past where we end with effluent distribution now. And I see all the components with pump stations and all this. So the next question is, it looks like, I'm unclear from all these numbers, if we would be buying the land, leasing the land, or what? What's the answer?
So there's a discussion about it in the feasibility report about whether it made sense to buy or lease. And we could do either one. The issue and where we sort of landed in the report was it makes sense to buy it because we're going to be spending a lot of money on infrastructure, and a lease would be some time certain. And it's certainly that the infrastructure would long last the lease period.
Yeah.
And in addition to that, it's really important to us to manage that basin sustainably. And that would also mean it would be important to control what is applied to the land, right? And so we want to be able to have control over the timing and like what fertilizers are used and how the water's applied.
So the first item in the staff report was this $34 million for purchase of land, water rights, and underground storage. So a couple things. What would be the land part of that? Roughly, of $34 million, and how many acres are we talking about?
John Enlow, do you want to address how the breakdown?
Yeah, John Enlow for the record. So the acres of land, it's approximately 1,500 acres.
1,500, okay. And have you estimated, even just in today's world, because we're not doing this now, of the 34 million, what that is?
The value of the land itself?
Well, you had to come up with 34 million somehow. So
so the 34 million, it's really a combination of all of the different factors.
Okay.
The land.
Why don't we go with you're not sure right now, and I'll ask my next question.
It could be, there's no specific dollar amount for the land. There's no specific dollar amount for underground storage. It's somewhat arbitrary.
Right. So if we hadn't been buying the land, I was going to ask about conservation easement to ensure that there would be no development out there. That's a promise. But unless we actually own the land, that's just a promise, and we would have to cover that with some kind of conservation easement or some kind of management agreement that it couldn't be violated.
The purchase agreement would take care of that and ensure that there is a conservation easement on that property.
Another question I had, and this is really a pretty big policy question. So over at Reno, John Flansburgh, our Public Works Director, has been talking about more of a sell of reclaimed water, right? Selling reclaimed water. Right now it's let's get rid of it, and it's thank you for taking it, and we appreciate the ability to use it on your land. But he has been talking probably this last year of turning it into an actual resource that we sell. So I wondered with this deal, how is that handled? Are we still thanking people and might be our land and we're thanking ourselves, or are we selling it for storage for resale, or have you guys thought through those issues?
I think that the details do need to be figured out. It could be one of two ways. We could potentially lease to someone who wanted to grow on that land with our conditions that I kind of started walking
So we
through.
might buy it, and just like we did some other projects, get in a leased farmer to grow, and part of the deal would be we either give them the water or they have to buy the water.
Right.
And we'd have to work that through.
We have not worked that out.
Okay. And then the last thing, I guess, is, you gave us this feasibility study, and on the last page, there's a figure 3. I don't know if you have it available. I didn't really understand the figure. I know it's important. You put it in here. You put very few figures in. But it shows that there's an undesirable shallow groundwater condition. And then it shows all of these different scenarios where there's no municipal pumping, there's some municipal pumping. I wasn't sure how to interpret this graph and what it means to us.
So
Steph, I'll take that. John Enlow for the record. So what figure 3 is from, it's from the more detailed hydrogeologic investigation and the modeling report that our staff prepared. And we were really trying to really bracket what's the variation, the potential of this site for different uses. So take the undesirable shallow groundwater effects. If you keep putting water out there, so we've got a bathtub, right, that's empty. You fill up the bathtub, it's going to spill over. And that's basically what we were looking at in this issue. If the aquifer is too full,
Right, you can't use it anymore. So is what you're trying to show in this graph, the dotted line, that's a point at which you don't want to overfill? Is that what you're
Right.
trying to say?
exactly.
And then I was really interested, you said the groundwater in this area has dropped 100 feet, which I
Yeah,
guess
more
has
than that.
created this empty condition of ability to fill. But what has caused that? Has it been agricultural pumping? I mean, there's no development out there. I mean,
there's a
Yeah,
lot
it's
of things.
been 40 to 50 years of agricultural pumping in the area that has
has
created
dropped
that.
the groundwater table. I mean, this is important. 100 feet. That's how much Pyramid Lake had gone down. A decade ago, it had dropped 100 feet, surface water. I mean, this is quite a drawdown, I think. And is this in a basin that would be designated by the state engineer as already over appropriated? Sub-basin?
So it's in the Warm Springs groundwater basin, which has been designated.
So it is. So they're saying the pumping today is exceeding the resupply. I mean, obviously it dropped 100 feet, right?
The amount of water rights appropriated in that valley exceed the perennial yield.
Right. And we're seeing it. So potentially, by doing this project, we could start bringing the groundwater table back up to a sustainable level. Would there still be pumping? I assume there's other groundwater pumping by other people around there.
Yes, so this is Stephanie Morris for the record. The idea is to rest the irrigation wells by using the recycled water, so indirect recharge plus potable recharge. So those two combined would help bring back those water levels.
But one more second, potable recharge. So are you talking about like at American Flat where we would send A+ water out there too?
No, the concept now is potable, not treated effluent, it's treated to A+.
Just-
Eventually, over time, that could be something that we can consider.
Okay.
But the idea now is potable.
All right, well, thank you, Mr. Chair, for indulging me. I figured since they did this whole feasibility study, we might as well know conditions at the start before you do more, kind of where we are. And I do understand it. It's a lot of money, $133 million. And I think we should have a big pause before we spend that kind of money to make sure all your questions are addressed. We already know it's going to work before we get into expending these kind of dollars.
Hold on just a second, Ms. Breckus. And yeah, and I don't disagree. I'll go back to my original statement. Devil is in the details.
Exactly. I was going to say that at the beginning, but you had already said it,
Right?
so.
Yeah, I mean, we've all said it at some point, and that's where we stand. I do have just a fast question. What's the perennial yield, the sustainable perennial yield in this basin? Do we know?
So based on the state engineer, again, they have it at 3,000 acre feet.
Okay.
That's for the whole basin. Our groundwater modelers looked at it for our area.
Yes.
That area that we're looking at, and it's 1,200 acre feet.
Okay.
And there's a lot of discussion in the in the summary feasibility report that talks about the sort of priorities of the existing water rights and in terms of Palomino Farms and their priority versus other pumpers in that area.
Okay. Water perks pretty quickly out there, to my knowledge. It doesn't take long for it to soak in. It doesn't, I haven't seen the geologic studies, but my guess is that it's not heavily clay laden.
Steph Morse for the record. We're not going to answer that, but we can have somebody in the audience answer that if you'd like to know. Mr. Cole.
Mr. Chairman, I have a few items.
Hold on just a second. Yeah, Ms. Hill, hold on just a minute.
Yes, the aquifer is quite permeable.
Yeah, you need to come up and identify yourself. I'm sorry.
Greg Pohl for the record. The aquifer is quite permeable in the center part of the basin where the project exists, so the water does percolate into the aquifer.
Okay. Okay, so we're gonna get some amount of perk off of the reclaimed water that is being used for agricultural purposes, because some's got to go down. But the problem with that is will we be contaminating our resource with nitrates?
And the Steph Morse for the record, that's exactly why we want to manage the application of irrigation water to avoid that. So if you apply it in a way that's very efficient, you have much less that perks into the groundwater basin. And Mr. Inlow can probably expand on that if you need a more thorough answer.
Well, again, I'm just going to go back. It's okay. Devil is in the detail. And so I mean, there's a lot of things that still have to be answered. I mean, my colleagues have raised some really great questions. And so, I mean, I'm waiting to, to sort of hear the final results of the studies. Ms. Dewar, Ms. Breckus, I apologize. And then Ms. Hill. Hold on just a second. I'm sorry, Ms. Hill.
Yeah, Ms. Dewar's questions raised something in my mind. Is there, and I think it's from the American Flat discussion, is there a void in Nevada law framework, legal framework about water, about who owns the right to water that gets re-injected back into the groundwater? So if you have, in this scenario, as I understand it, you have this basin where a lot of people are drawing up and it's gone down 100 feet. So we put in and fill it up to 100. Does that just windfall for these other people? And we should be able to say, oh no, it's our water.
Exactly.
And so if I am right, is there someone somewhere thinking we need a new water policy framework for this new reinjection water source? And is someone thinking about that? And do other states have a model already on that?
So I'll answer the Steph Morse for the record partially. That's why we would be getting a storage permit, and that would be intended to show what we're injecting in an accounting to the state engineer so that that water can be extracted by us. In addition to that, there aren't a lot of pumpers there, and we would be probably looking at ways to mitigate any risk to that. Other states have models, but I would not necessarily say they're good models.
John Zimmerman for the record. So I think that goes back to the devil's in the details, but that aquifer storage and recovery permit from the state engineer, that's going to be a very technical process to get that permitted, and that's where we'll go through the accounting as far as how much water we're putting in versus able to pull out.
Okay. Yeah, no, I'm going to let Ms. Hill speak, but I just want to remind you of one thing. The great statistician George Box said that all models are wrong, some are useful. Ms. Hill, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just would like to see on, future information collected is, as far as looking for models of other communities who have done something similar. Have they paid for underground storage? Is there precedent for that? I hadn't heard of that before, and so I'd like that to be investigated by the team. And in addition, this may be more of a future agenda item, but it does directly correlate to what we're speaking to is how can we see a standalone analysis comparing all the effluent reuse projects that we're doing? We're doing a lot of projects like the trick pipe, Purple Pipe Irrigation, the Palomino Valley and American Flat, with our Truckee rights and what we're willing to dedicate to in-stream flows as replacement. Just because I don't know, and I know our staff are thinking about all these things, but I just want to see if we're looking at all these projects holistically as well. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Stewart?
Yeah, I had a similar was going to be my next question, Ms. Hill, was about, I had not heard about buying underground storage. So I don't know how our other ASR agreements are set up. You know, I don't think we buy it from anyone. So that was like a new idea.
So our existing ASR permit, we control the land where our production well is located, so we have the ability to store water and inject water from that site. So it really gets down to land ownership and control and being able to drill a production well and be able to inject through it.
So, but you have a line item, underground storage. So is that meant to pay for underground storage, or is that meant the costs of creating? I wasn't sure.
So this is Steph Morris for the record. It's a benefit. So you own the land and you can put water underneath of it, but it's a benefit of land ownership. But it also is a benefit to us because we can store up to 45,000 acre feet of water. If we had to go and build and buy land and build a reservoir to be able to store that, that would be a cost. So it's almost like a cost avoidance. And so it is an important element of valuing why we would pay X for the land. But it doesn't necessarily, you can't necessarily separate it from the purchase of the land.
Okay, it's an additional benefit that comes along with acquiring the land. We also get the storage underneath. So it's kind of written here in a weird way because it's written as an expense item, but you're also saying it buys us something more than land.
Correct.
Doesn't buy us the water, but.
And correct, the water is included in that purchase
So
price
there are
as
water
well.
rights then?
Yes, there
Okay.
are water rights.
So do we know what they are just generally?
The water rates are, and again, this is all in the report, it's detailed, they are more than 1,200, but based on our modeling and the sustainable yield of that area.
Only 1,200.
We capped it at 1,200.
Okay.
And I'm
But-
sorry, just for the record, like, we would be providing additional information about all of this when we came back with the deal points as well.
Ms. Hill?
But to my question, Mr. Chairman, I think it would be important to know if other government agencies have paid for that, and what that looks like. I just think, full transparency on, who we're buying land from and why we're paying them what they're paying. I think it would be good to know if this has been done in other communities. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Have we asked enough questions? What would you like from us today? Because it shows on the agenda item number 9 for possible action. Do you require any action from us?
Yes, I think we would like to ensure that the board wants us to continue moving forward with this work. And there's a list of items 1 through 6 in the staff report about further things that we would develop and bring back. And so the direction we're asking for is for the board to let us know if we should continue to for lack of a better word, dig into those items and come back to the board with additional information, or if the board does not want staff to continue to pursue this project.
Okay,
Well, question on that then.
go ahead.
You're saying though, in the staff report, you say that you believe it's a net positive, not just net, but significantly positive. So you must feel like the expenditure of the 133 million would be repaid plus right now. Like you have a feeling it's a positive net benefit.
Steph Morris for the record, and Mr. Enlow can jump in. We have not developed a financial model for this project yet, so we
don't know.
We would continue to do that. Our sense is that there is a huge benefit to the storage, as well as a cost avoidance for the cities for the ability to dispose of the treated effluent. So we do think that that's the case, but in terms of a detailed financial model, we can't really do that until we finalize prices. These are estimates of what we think it's going to cost, as well as devising an interlocal agreement, negotiating that, and how the costs would be shared.
Okay.
Okay. I'm sorry, go ahead, Mr. Lawson.
So first of all, I think this is very forward-thinking, and I appreciate it. The chairman and I were just doing some math, and basically to get 45,000 acre-feet of storage, you need 11 Sparks marinas. So just thinking about the volume and the size of that, and keeping in mind that the Sparks Marina is 400 feet at its deepest, that 11 of them gives me a visual picture of just how much land and levees and everything that would go along with that. So underground storage to me sounds like just a forward-thinking way of doing things.
We converted acre feet, 325,851 gallons per acre foot times 45,000.
He did the math. I
Have a
checked his
napkin.
math. But anyways, it helps me to visualize what it would look like. And that as a reservoir is, I would think, tremendously more expensive than what we're talking about for underground storage. So I'm wholeheartedly in favor of this. I know we've been talking about it at the city of Sparks for over a year now. And the details are definitely what needs to be worked out. And I think you're on the right track, though. Thank you.
And if we get to the 45,000 number, and we look at the total cost, it comes out somewhere around $3,000 an acre foot. So I know that there's some other ancillary costs involved, but I would challenge anyone, whether you're in the room or listening, to tell me what an acre foot of water will be worth in 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, which is why I've always questioned, the effluent. What's its real value? I mean, we look at it as today, but we do these long-term agreements. What's the value going to be in 20 years? And I'm not in a position to answer that question. I call it the inevitable alchemy of time. What's not so precious now becomes very precious in the future. So I'm supportive of hearing more. I'm not supportive yet of saying yes. I want to hear more, and I want to try to understand, sort of the nuances and how it will affect each one of us. But I think we can all agree, I think all of this board agrees that we've got to come up with some solutions for storing more water. I don't see any other path forward, and I, like my colleagues from Sparks and like my colleagues from Reno, feel that this is forward thinking. So I'm supportive of that. So do you want it, because there isn't really a proposed motion, but you've got 6 items in here, which again I think are all salient to the conversation. So how would you like us? Mr. Folletta.
Well, if the board's inclined, you could accept a motion to accept the staff report and give staff direction to continue to pursue this project, and in particular, the items that they've outlined in the staff report.
Okay, all right. Okay, Ms. Stewart.
Just one more question on that. If we did that, one thing that's not really in here is when you would come back to us. So one of the items here was negotiate a proposed cost-sharing operating agreement. I think before you get to that point, we should be getting an update on the things that you're finding as we go, whether it's quarterly or biannually, so that before you're suddenly coming to us, which has happened before, with an agreement that you spent, months on negotiating, I think we want to get some info before we get there. But just since that's one of the items, I didn't want to say I'm totally ready to do that item until we get more information.
Right.
Thank you. We will do that.
Yeah, I think we're all in agreement. We need more information. Okay. Before I look for a motion, Madam Clerk, do we have any public comment on this item? Is there anyone wishing to speak at this time? Okay, all right, I will close public comment. I will bring it back to the board, looking for a motion to give direction to staff. Mr. Anderson.
I'll make a motion to direct staff to continue moving forward with the feasibility study and assuring the 6 points are addressed in that process as it continues forward.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second, but I'd like an
For
addition.
purposes of discussion?
Yes.
Okay. So
I'd like to
I
make,
have a motion and I have a second. Hold on just a second.
Okay.
Ms. Hill, because I've got a member that's
I understand.
Not with me here. Are you comfortable with the motion?
Mr. Chairman, the one issue is those 6 points don't cover many of the points that were brought up by board members today. So I don't know if there would be an appetite to adding plus the discussion and questions addressed by the board in discussion during the meeting today.
Okay, all right, under discussion. So I have a motion and a second.
Exactly what I was going to ask
Okay.
is that not just these 6 points, because there's really just 5, and 6 is everything else. So the everything else is at a minimum, what
Right.
the points that have been brought up
Other,
during this
other
discussion.
matters as may be identified.
Right. So the 5 points and the things you've heard today from all of us, are clearly got to be addressed as well.
And some of those, and hold on, Mr. Anderson, some of those are not within TUMWA's purview. Some are jurisdictional matters, and so I don't know how we address some of that, but I don't know how we deal with that. Mr. Anderson. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr.
I just
Follett, I
wanted, so
apologize.
for purposes of the motion, it's a little general and vague to address the points brought up by the board. If we could be more specific about what the points are you want them to address, or alternatively, you could just direct staff to come back and give you updates on what they're doing to pursue this project and give maybe iterative direction at that point.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure that at least, the reason I said for discussion was I wanted to make sure there was at least the periodic updates were addressed. That was important to me, is not to spend a year and come back with an agreement. So that was very important. You heard what we said, though. The issues. If you don't coordinate with the tribe, if you don't work out issues with Reno, we may have board members that can't support the agreement. So at least you know what's on their mind.
Okay. Mrs. Breckus.
Yeah, I'm not going to support the motion. I think it's premature for TUMWA to move forward until, if Reno's not going to do it, and I've been calling for it for some time now, this body learn what the issue is at Tumwharf. Some members know about what's going on at Tumwharf, others don't, including the major owner. So maybe it needs to happen at this meeting before you go on and have more conversation with these stakeholders. 2, and most importantly to me, is Reno's financial feasibility and ability to pay for this, in addition to the one on the CIP, when you couple those, I think puts this body in harm. I really do. If you've got an agency that's hasn't touched connection fees through probably one of the biggest booms, square footage wise, in a city's history, and isn't touching connection fees and going on 8 years, how are they going to be around to do all this? I don't think they will be. So I won't support it on these motions. That I won't support moving forward here until those questions are answered clearly about our partner. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So we have a motion and we have a second. We've had discussion. You guys understand potentially a timeline of coming back to us. I would like, maybe, I don't want to say maybe monthly, but maybe every other month or something of that nature, just sort of giving us updates. Or maybe you can, like Mr. Hauk does, who I don't see in the room today, usually gives us a water update. Maybe you can sort of include as, where we are along the way, and maybe we can give direction in terms of baby steps.
Well, I had suggested.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Sorry, hold on just a second, Ms. Hill. Ms. Dewar.
I had suggested quarterly just because I don't know how long you think all of these steps are going to take. Is it a 2-year thing, 1-year thing?
Steph Morris, for the record, I think quarterly would probably be better than every other month because some of these items are just going to take a bit of
Long time.
Okay.
Yeah, and then if we do it, if something comes up in the interim, then we don't need, we can come up earlier than quarterly. We can just agendize it
At minimum.
at minimum.
Okay, all right. Ms. Hill.
I was confused as to what the motion is. Are we not allowed to direct staff to investigate the additional things that were mentioned during the board? I didn't hear our attorney very well, so I just wanted to make sure that I understand what the motion is.
So, Mr. Folletta, would you?
As I understood Mr. Anderson's motion, it was to accept the staff report and give staff direction to pursue the project consistent with the report, which would include pursuing the 6 identified items there. I then heard Ms. Dorr, in discussion on the motion, proposed the idea of a periodic updates, and subsequent discussion has been that that could be quarterly, could make sense. That has not yet been amended to the motion, which is the point I wanted to kind of interject and make. So if we want that, we should amend the motion to make it consistent with Ms. Dorr's input. I did not say that the board could not direct staff to pursue specific other items in connection with this work. I just asked that whatever you direct staff to do, you be specific about it, because it wasn't clear to me what Ms. Dorr was proposing alternatively that they pursue.
Well, I'll be clear then. I'll add a few more things. I at least heard, I think, from Ms. Hill that she would like affirmative outreach to the Pyramid Lake Paiute tribe, because, you know, this is a taking away of reclaimed water and storing it, right?
It's Steph Morris for the record. I think that it very clearly specifies that the return flow issue, so it's not a taking away, the return flow issue, and it's very complicated in terms of what components we're talking about, has to be addressed, and staff understands that, and that is actually listed in item number 2. And if it helps for the motion for clarification, we have detailed notes on what the board wants to hear. And if we don't come back and address them quarterly, I think the board could give us further specific direction. Because I think a lot of the items, while not specifically raised, are actually covered in the 5 in some way, shape, or form.
Maybe we didn't understand that permitting requirements included return flow, so that's helpful. Okay.
I hope that helps.
So as it stands, but with these updates, okay? Is that okay, Mr. Anderson? To amend the motion?
Yes, I'm good to amend the motion to the quarterly updates.
Okay,
Does that work for you?
all right, let's move forward. Maker of the motion agrees to the amended, and
Yeah,
then the
second,
seconder
yes.
agrees. Okay, we've asked for public comment. Is there any other discussion at this time? All right, seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Okay, so motion carries, what do we have, 3, 4, 5, 2, 1. Okay, all right, thank you so much. All right, that takes us now to item number 10, General Manager's Report. Mr. Forey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to say I'm wearing a Smart About Water shirt. We had our, I think it was our fourth or third? The third annual Smart About Water Day that we skipped the last 2 years. And it was at Lazy Five Regional Park in Spanish Springs. And
I have a note to bring it up also.
and those who were present, board members, got a shirt, I think, maybe.
I didn't get one.
You didn't get a shirt?
I didn't get a shirt.
Okay, well, talk to us later. We'll
It
get
has the
you
word
a
smart
shirt.
on it.
Yeah.
And therefore,
You can't wear those? So anyway, we had a great time out there. It was a little bit cool, a little windy. Would have liked a little bit warmer day, but we did have over 100 people come through. We had many different departments from TUMA covered, and with nice displays and things like that. We had other agencies out there that also were involved, regional planning.
cooperative extension.
Yes, TUMWRF was represented there as
Yes,
well.
yes,
And
East Creek Water.
others, cooperative extension. So it's a good time, and we'll probably head back to, I'm guessing, Reno next year for Idlewild Park, which is a pretty great place to have one with all the traffic that's typically through there. So had a great time and very successful. So thank you. That's it.
Okay. All right, thank you so much. That takes us now to item number 11, our final public comment. Madam Clerk, do we have anyone signed in? Okay, I will close public comment, bring it back to the board. That takes us to item 12, board comments. I was going to mention Smart About Water. It happened on May 7th. I thought it was well attended. I mean, we got a lot more people than we would normally have on a regular day at Lazy Five. So, I mean, it was a pretty good draw. The food trucks were good. I think staff did a great job of coordinating it. Thank you, Cami. You did a wonderful job. We had great posters and banners and all kinds of stuff. There's some really good stuff. And Robert, you were amazing. The assistance that all you guys put in was phenomenal. Members, anything else? Okay, that takes us to item 13. We are adjourned. Thank you.